hard to maintain sometimes that, everything's going to be okay in the midst of chaos. Um, I'm going to tell you a little story, which there's a Mullah Nasruddin. It's a Persian wise man who there's a lot of different tales written about. So Mullah Nasruddin had been working in the fields all day, and he was tired and sweaty, and his clothes and his shoes were covered with mud and stains. Because he'd been fasting all day long for Ramadan, he was also quite hungry. Finally, it was almost sundown, and Nasruddin knew that he would soon be able to eat. The wealthiest man in town had invited everyone to come break their fast in his home that evening with a huge feast. Nasruddin knew that he would be late if he went home to change his clothes before heading into town, and he decided it was better to arrive in dirty clothes than it was to be late. So, and oh, what a party it was, what a feast. And he walked into this wealthy man's home, and Nasruddin imagined the delicious food that he would be eating: dates, lentils, chickpeas, olives, and bread, hummus, falafels, chicken, and beef, and best of all, the dessert, halga, date rolls, figs, and baklava. When Nasruddin arrived, the wealthy man opened the door and looked Nasruddin up and down scornfully as he was wearing ragged clothes and down to his muddy shoes. And without a word of welcome, he gestured Nasruddin to come in and walked away abruptly. Nasruddin joined the throngs of people who had all dressed in their finest clothes. The tables were laden with all sorts of delicious foods. And despite his effort to hurry, the seats were all taken, and nobody tried to move over or make room for Nasruddin. In fact, nobody offered him food. He had to reach over and around people to get at the food for his plate, and nobody spoke to him, and it was as if he wasn't there. The other guests ignored him so completely that Nasruddin could not enjoy the food on his plate, no matter how finely prepared and tasty it was. In fact, after a few bites, Nasruddin was so uncomfortable, he decided to leave. He hurried home and changed into his finest clothing, including a beautiful coat. Nasruddin returned to the feast, and this time the host welcomed him with a huge smile. Come in, he said. As Nasruddin entered, the people waved and called to him from all corners of the room and they invited him to sit near them and offered him food. Nasruddin sat down quietly. Picking up a plump fig, he carefully placed it in his coat pocket, saying, "Eat, you coat, eat." Next, he took a handful of nuts and put them in his pocket, saying, "Eat, coat, eat." Then he began to feed his coat in earnest, grabbing all sorts of food. Soon, everyone in the room was staring at Nasruddin, wondering what he was doing. The host hurried over. "Nasruddin, what are you doing? Why are you feeding your coat in this manner?" "Well," replied Nasruddin, "when I first came to the feast in my old farming clothes, I was not welcome. No one would speak with me. But when I changed into this coat, suddenly I was greeted warmly. So I realized it's not me that was welcome at the party, but my clothing. And so I am feeding my coat." It's kind of like fitting for this time where, I think that the world will be judged by what kind of coat we are wearing. And in one sense, what this causes us to do is that we need to awaken in this time. Awakening means arousing, awakening interest. It is an act of awakening from sleep, a revival of attention or interest, a recognition. So in this time of peril of our planet, we are, as a people, and as individuals needing to awaken and to pull ourselves together. We need to wake up or break through a dream that this world that we have created is uniformly real and understand it as a transitory manifestation of, in one sense, unexamined assumptions of culture. It is the fancy coat that we are feeding. It is the large job that signals success. It is the narrative of power and dominance. We need an awakening to understand that reality is subjective, not constant or uniform. We need to see the world through our own experiences. We look at the world through the highs and lows of our life, and we interpret things, make meaning, and carry a multitude of attitudes that we are simply unaware of. And it is from that unawareness, that we need to have an awakening. Joseph Campbell puts it this way: people say that what we are all seeking is the meaning of life. I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think that what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonance with our own innermost being and reality, so that we can actually feel the rapture of being alive. Those words from Joseph Campbell tell us that as we assume that we are making meaning, underneath our reasoning and our perceptions, we are seeking the experience of being alive. We are looking to transcend our life experiences on the purely physical plane so that they resonate in our hearts. I was really taken yesterday. I wasn't sure when I went to the concert whether I really wanted to be singing, because I had missed the last two rehearsals, and I was a little unclear. But as I was standing on stage and being very quiet on the parts that I didn't really know, so I wouldn't be singing the wrong notes, I was looking out on the audience. And in my heart, I was simply wanting to bless everyone in their journey. And I'm wondering about the time ahead, how we can be like that blanket of kindness, and put it out on the world. We have to get back to feeling the connection to others. We have to get back to inviting more people to belong with us. And there is something larger than all of the mendacity that we will be facing. We are more complex in terms of our connection that we have within ourselves, our body, our minds, our spirits. And in some way, we need to find that voice, that place in ourselves where we can bring those things together. And I'm wondering, what do you do? What do you do to bring those things together? Mind, body, spirit. Any thoughts?
We find people who think the same way.
Try to find people who think the same way. That's one of the reasons we come here, right? If I were to just guess for Jill, and some of it is that she loves to facilitate music for people and has her favorite artists who are delivering a message that I'm just assuming and filling in a few blanks that speak to her heart or her mind or her spirit. Anybody else got some hobbies that you use to put yourself back together again? If I were to guess, old Nan communes with her animals. Right? Nina, you probably have a very lovely relationship with your garden.
And the birds.
And the birds.
We're up to 6 peanut butter jars a week. Covered. Amazing.
How about you, Art?
My experience is a little different. It's not something I do. I like to take charge. I like to do things. I like to help people and work hard to change things. But then there are times when I have no idea what to do, but it works out anyway. And all of a sudden, I have some perspective on myself and the world, and it's a great feeling.
Just being a good, giving person, being involved, helping people.
Huh?
I'm thinking of my professional work with some clients, not with all clients, but in some sessions, counseling sessions, with some clients, there is a good, strong connection with body, mind, and spirit.
Sheila?
I would say it's all about acceptance. Change what you can change, contribute where you can contribute, and where you can't. A very good friend of mine, I think most of you know, Joni Russo, she moved from New York because she Pennsylvania, because she was so concerned about the Trump influence. And then she found where she moved to New York, every single person in her apartment complex is an avid Trumper, save for the woman next door to her. So she says she's suffering from depression and she's thinking of moving again. And that's a terrible place to be in. I mean, really, you you can't keep running your whole life. And I tried to offer her some sukkar, but I said to her myself, I felt like I was crushed under the juggernaut of republicanism, and I found it difficult, to function for a while. But then you have to get to some level, even with my knee, of acceptance. This is the best it's going to be, and maybe some days you can't function very well, but for all intents and purposes, you have to go forward. You can't go back. So you do whatever you can to help whomever you can. Otherwise, I think you should exit the planet. But where you can't make meaningful change, accept it and tell yourself there are areas where you can.
Thank you. Joan or Bill? Barbara?
She's muted. Barbara's muted. Barbara, you need to unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
All right,
No, she's
Try it
still
again.
muted.
do it again.
Do it again, Barbara. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay, well, I think basically Sheila said it all. Again, I like people. I've been helping people all my life. Again, I was in a helping profession to earn a living. So, I agree. At some point, you have to accept it. At my age, there's not a lot that I can do physically to help people, but at least I guess I can be there as a resource. And I guess I can also, I think, try to understand or reach a common ground with those people politically who don't believe the same way I do. I do. I'm not a Trumper at all, ever. And but I do agree that we need to reach some kind of a common ground and try to make the best of it or make positive changes from our side and our points of view. Okay?
Well said, Barbara.
Bill and or Joan?
They're muted, so if they're trying to talk, we can't hear them.
Don't want to put anybody on the spot either.
I didn't do it.
Just the way.
All right, well, and Steve, did you want to add something?
Well, I guess most of my activity is online. I try to reach out to people, on very, mostly on, either on what's called Blue Sky and Facebook, let them know they're not alone. There are those who do agree with them. In fact, I even joined a group where actually it was called the group where we pretend to be a family. And it was just intended just to be humorous, but it's turned into get very serious at times. There are people with all sorts of personal problems, and people out there are willing to reach out and help them and give them advice and direct them to various contacts so that they can get help. So it really has become a family.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for your,
Laurie?
yes.
I was just thinking, I read something in the Times today, probably nobody else had time to do it, but it was about all of the problems in school now, fights breaking out in high school, and kids, videotaping them and then sending them out on the internet, and then kids emptying out from the classrooms. And I thought to myself, if I were back teaching, the first thing I do is stand in front of the door and say, none of us are going anywhere. But I think for change, sometimes it takes a lot of courage. And why schools aren't passing rules where you walk in the building, you put your cell phone in a box, labeled so nobody absconds with yours, and you retrieve it at the end of the day. Why have we allowed things to get to this point? It's as though we've, just decided to abscond with any kind of responsibility, abjure it, just let things happen. I mean, and then there was another article I didn't have time to read, that American students had the lowest math scores in the universe. I mean, I just don't understand why we're not more forward thinking and don't have the courage to make changes that we all need all know that they need to be made, and we have to get together and we have to make them. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe there's an element of courage necessary in bringing about change, positive change.
I agree that you have to have courage to make change. We can, so many things, exist. And a lot of it, I think, in answer to your question, how did we allow things to get to where it is? I personally think it comes down to cultural assumptions that we make. We make an awful lot of cultural assumptions. And those mostly are unexamined belief systems. For instance, in our culture, being on time, starting on time, is like, it's kind of, it is the way we do it, right? I don't know how many webinars you've been on, but they were like, okay, it's time, we're going to respect
Right.
your time, and so therefore we're going to start. Well, it was very interesting. I have a dear, dear friend, Sky Kirshner. Some of you might know Sky. He was a Methodist minister down in the Berryville church for a long time in the 80s. Anyway, he lives in West Virginia now, and he married a woman from Costa Rica, and we were invited to his wedding. So we went down. This was quite a while ago. I think Zachary was 14, and he's 41 now. So a bit ago. Anyway, So we go down and we're there for a week. And we stayed in the family compound. It actually took Stephen and I a while to agree to figure out that we were not staying in the guest room. We were actually staying in the parents' room. Like his, one of Maria's uncle and his wife were like camping out in their daughter's room, but we didn't know this. We didn't know. So, because that was their culture. But at any rate, we were there for a week, so they had actually created a lot of different trips. So there was a bus trip to tour like all over Costa Rica, and we were supposed to gather at 11. And so we gathered at 11. The bus left at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And the reason that it left at 1 o'clock is that not everybody was there. Right? But that is the time. That's the timing in that culture. You wait until everybody's there. It's not like, oh yeah, we're leaving at 11, right? But we have this kind of unexamined cultural expectation that we need to be on time. You know what I mean? And things are going to start whether we're there or not. But it is very interesting. We do understand it when we put it in a different place. I was doing a wedding for this couple, and it was in Milford, and it was going to start at 4 o'clock. It's going to start at 4 o'clock. It's going to start at 4 o'clock. So I said, okay, but is there anyone coming from far away that if they're not there at 4 o'clock, we're going to wait? And as it turned out, in that particular wedding, there was not. But really, you think they would have started if grandma wasn't there and was stuck in traffic? No. They would have waited, because you can't start a wedding until all of the people, significant people, are there. So in one sense, we kind of are going into, from my perspective, this is just my perspective, and hopefully I'm wrong, but we're going into a place where there are these cultural expectations of who has power and who doesn't have power, who gets perks and who doesn't get perks. And we're really challenged, in one sense, to figure out how to maneuver through that and always, as Sheila says, what do we need to understand in this situation? I don't think we need to capitulate. But it's interesting. How do we relate to those people, who really think that grocery prices are going to go down and Trump will have pulled it off? And also, how are we helpful to them when they find out that that's not going to be true? Like how, and I'm saying, what is the cultural expectation that people have grown up with? You don't treat people who are dressed shabbily, according to the story, right?
Mhm.
You don't make room for people who you don't agree with. So we are definitely. So I want to leave you with one story that kind of illustrates, in one sense, the cultural assumptions that we make. And this is from a recovery community. And so Tosi was born and grew up in Japan. He had been living in the United States for nearly 20 years, going to graduate school and working as a systems analyst, while his family had remained in Japan. Tosi entered a residential treatment center for alcohol dependence, where the treatment program expected every client to notify his or her family members about being in treatment. This had proven to be a positive step for many clients and their families in this treatment program, where the belief was that the contact with families helped clients become honest about their substance abuse and reconnected with possibly estranged relatives and take responsibility for the decision to seek treatment. Hoshi was reluctant, but staff members persuaded him to comply with the program's expectation. He wrote his family describing his current life and explaining his need for treatment. And it was not until weeks later, after he had been discharged from residential treatment and was participating in the program's continuing care program, that he received a reply. Staff members were shocked to learn that Hoshi's parents had disowned him because he had shamed the family by disclosing the details of his life to the program staff, publicly admitting that he had a drinking problem. As Hoshi's story demonstrates, a well-meaning but cultural inappropriate intervention can be counterproductive to recovery. The program applied a one-size-fits-all model without being sensitive to the possibility that the approach might harm their client. Fortunately, Hoshi eventually reconciled with his family, and the program administrators and staff began to develop initiatives to improve their cultural awareness and competency. And in one sense, that kind of cultural assumptions and making room is also something that I personally think is going to be affected. You know, we move into perhaps a more intolerant kind of attitude toward people who are different. So how do we maneuver through? Any ideas?
Laurie, remember, well, of course, that's where my area of expertise is, but it was probably not until the mid to late 90s that in Japan, if you couldn't get the trains to run on time, you expected to commit suicide. Anybody who was responsible for anything working well, you were expected to apologize to the public and then take your own life, because the Japanese work on, shame, not guilt. And I was thinking of one of our standard expressions in this society: time is money. And of course, money is power, and money and power really determine everything. And I was thinking of something my mother used to say to my brother and I. Now, she didn't mean it to be an ethnic slur, but when we didn't get our chores done in a timely manner, she would stand in the center of the room and she would sing, "Mañana, mañana is good enough for me." And then, she'd continue a chorus or two until we got on what needed to be done. But, every culture is different. Every culture has different expectations. And I agree with you. You can't crush them. You have to abide them, and you have to go with the program. And if you're going to live in another country, you better tailor yourself. Like Westerners taking a bath in Japan, you better take a bath before you go to the bath, and if you get soap on somebody else, or you put your dirty body in the bath, that's a horrible disgrace. So you need to learn the customs, and then you need to go with them, or maybe in your own way, try to tailor them, or wearing the toilet slippers in any other room but the toilet. I mean, the family would be appalled. They'd want to throw you out. Those are just different cultural customs that you need to abide by. Or get out of the country, I guess.
No, I think that social media is responsible for so much, and all over the world, young people are on social media, and that's a change that has never existed before. So we'll see.
We'll see. So I'm going to end with a poem by Persian poet Rumi. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds meet. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. There is energy in awakening, the field where we meet beyond right and wrong, normative culture, and unexamined assumptions. We open this space by being conscious that the circle needs to be opened. That's where you start. We open this space in our own understanding that we are complex beings that have all sorts of unconscious and conscious thoughts, feelings, emotions, and that there is much about our world and our culture that we are simply unaware of. If we could just sing This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. In all things essential, unity. In all things circumstantial, liberty. In things yet to be, courage. And in all things, wisdom and love. So we extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth. And our ability to reach beyond our differences and connect in love.
Yeah, straight on the fly, though, Lori.
You needed that.
Yeah,
Glad you were here.
yeah.
All right, we've got cookies from the concert yesterday and other things, hot coffee. Thank you. Nice to see you, Barbara. Have a
Yeah,
good
nice to
week.
see you.
Bye.
Yes, thanks. Bye,
Good,
everybody.
good.
Yep.
Joan and
Warren,
Bill,
see you guys, what, 7 o'clock on Wednesday, correct?
7 o'clock on Wednesday, yes.
Be on time.
I- That isn't one of my failings. I've many, but promptness is not. Because I've always felt that really, I guess I'm a product of the culture, that's really disrespectful to steal someone else's time. So
It's not
without a dang good reason, I'm on.
Beach League. She was married to Fred. Fred, I think.
Yes, Fred, that's his name. Fred was a wonderful man, wonderful man.
You look at back the 10 when you come up, and I had.
All right, guys.
Bye,
Have a
Sheila.
great Wednesday.
Ellen?
Cool.
excellent. They had piano shipped from New York. It was this musician's piano that as he grew older, he couldn't play the piano. He reached a certain age where he said, I'm gonna go to church. She put it to camp that piano. Next week, she's married.
Stephen, already?
Yeah, yeah. One thought, and I'm certainly not there yet. One of the
I know them. It's like,
is anger.
because they were.
And I think it's